Tonight, get the inside story on the Catholic Standard and Times, the Catholic Star Herald, and the Monitor as we visit the diocesan newspapers. Father Pat Lavin explains the Christian rite of initiation of adults, and we'll go one-on-one with Bishop John Reiss. All this next on Catholic Magazine.
With your window on your world, this is Catholic Magazine. Good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Perillo.
And I'm Pat Shelton. Thanks for being with us again.
On tonight's program, we'll go one-on-one with Bishop John Reiss of the Trenton Diocese.
Later on in the program, Father Pat Lavin will tell us all about the new Christians coming into the Catholic Church. But right now, I think one of the most fascinating fields is the field of journalism, and the same is true for Catholic journalism. We'll take you behind the scenes today for an in-depth look at our diocesan newspapers of Trenton, Camden, and Philadelphia. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Extra, extra, read all about it. And reading all the news of their diocese and the world is exactly what close to 150,000 readers do each week in their local diocesan newspaper. Being the official newspapers of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, the Diocese of Camden, and the Diocese of Trenton, the Catholic Standard and Times, the Catholic Star Herald, and the Monitor, respectively, have the responsibility of bringing to more than 3 million Catholics across the area not only the events of their own diocese, but those on a national and international level. The key to putting together an edition so successfully each week is organization and planning. Planning which begins at a meeting of the editorial and advertising staffs. The first order of business for the Standard and Times is a complete review of the current edition. Each individual page of the issue is meticulously checked, not only for grammatical, spelling, or printing errors, but also for ways to improve the look and layout of each page. In addition to reviewing the previous edition, plans are made for upcoming issues. But this particular issue, like so many before, is due to go to press in 5 working days, which means only one thing.
The heat is on. The heat is on. The heat is on.
An essential component of any newspaper, advertising, not only generates revenue, but also determines how many pages each issue will be, based on the number of advertisements for that particular week. Although a majority of advertisements received by the papers are in what is known as camera-ready form, or ready to be placed and printed, many require the creativity of the advertising artist, who conceptualizes and produces each organization's advertisement. Advertisements which won't appear without the effort of an advertising manager and representatives who sell the space to businesses and organizations. The only way these advertisements are seen is if people pick up the paper and read it. Getting readers to do just that is the work of the circulation department, whose mission is to promote the paper and ultimately have it reach every family in the diocese through home delivery.
Hello, I'm Kennedy. Would you like to subscribe to the Catholic Standard Times?
Yes, I would.
Putting together each issue may seem like only a matter of juggling each page until everything fits. But as the layout staff of the Catholic Star Herald will tell you, the process is harder than it looks. Each individual advertisement or article must be placed on the proper page and appropriate section in order to give each page an aesthetically pleasing look. It is only after each advertisement has found its place that each story can be given theirs. Armed with assignments, notes, tape recorders, and phones, reporters take on the challenge of translating to written word the who, what, where, when, why, and how of any event, whether it occurs in their own diocese or around the world. And although it may seem that a reporter's job is finished when the last T is crossed and the final I dotted, the reality is that the work is just beginning for members of the editorial staff. Copy editors, managing editors, and editors-in-chief are the jack of all trades in the newspaper business. In addition to running the newsroom and handing out assignments to reporters and photographers, their responsibilities also include layout, headlines, photos, captions, editorials, and rewrites, just to name a few. And as time begins to run short and the deadline draws nearer, they too begin to feel what the rest of the staff has already been experiencing. Pictures can often tell a story or enhance an article, and no one knows that better than the individuals who capture the images we see in print. Unlike the Standard and Times and the Monitor, who utilize freelance photographers for a majority of their photos, the Star-Herald is fortunate enough not only to have their own full-time staff photographer, but also a fully equipped darkroom. Once the photos are selected, they are either printed, reduced, or enlarged, then numbered by page and location to correspond with their appropriate place in the issue. With the last few minutes ticking down to deadline, the advertising and editorial staffs make a final check of each page to ensure its content and accuracy, and then the issue is off to press. The Times Graphics, home to the Daily Journal of Vineland, Millville, New Jersey, is where a long week of work becomes a reality for the Catholic Standard and Times and the Monitor. The first stop for the issue, once it reaches the printer, is cut and paste. The issue is literally cut up and pasted on special sheets, which will then be used to make film negatives for the press. Color photos are given windows on the page, which will then be filled by prints which have undergone a process to divide them into the 4 colors that compose a photograph, namely magenta, yellow, cyan, and black. When each individual page is completed, it is then taken and photographed by a special camera and process, which burns the negative image of the page onto an aluminum press plate. The plates are developed and bent to fit the press. The plates are then loaded onto the press, where a test run is done to check for color clarity. Adjustments are made and the full run of the issue is started. The only thing left to do is watch the finished product roll off the press. With this week's issue of the diocesan paper behind them, it would seem as if the staff could take the opportunity to relax and catch their breath before starting the next issue. But when the alarm goes off and the sun dawns on a new day, they will, like many of us, make their way to the office to find on their desks a new challenge. The challenge of starting another week and another issue so that the news of the diocese and the world will be there for the faithful to read all about it.
We go now from the newspapers to some of the issues that you may read about in the newspapers as we go one-on-one with Bishop John C. Reiss of the Trenton Diocese. One-on-one with Bishop John C. Reiss of Trenton is brought to you by The Monitor, the weekly newspaper serving Catholics in central New Jersey. Interviewing Bishop Reiss is Joseph M. Donahue, editor-in-chief of The Monitor.
Good evening, Bishop Reiss, and thank you for going with me one-on-one tonight. One of the issues that we face in our society today seems to be the issue of life and death. It's something that troubles so many people. Just how should we be, as Catholics, looking at the issues of life and death?
The program is so vast as you know where to begin. With life can mean the beginning of conception all the way down to birth. Life can mean all the way down to the time we die naturally. And death can occur anywhere along that line. But mostly the death we talk about is euthanasia. Someone either committing suicide would be taking their life, which of course is against God's commandment, and someone helping them commit suicide, which would be another avenue. And then this whole idea of you get very worried about when some states have tried to put in a bill for euthanasia. And California had one, and I think maybe Oregon. And it took a lot of effort on the part of the bishops in that area to galvanize the people, to put them into contact and try to defeat a bill of that nature, whereby euthanasia, killing, or taking your life, or putting someone to death would almost destroy what even the medical idea is supposed to be about. The oath to preserve life, and now they want to turn around and kill it. And then we talk the euthanasia part. Assisted suicide is very prominent. We read about it in the paper, and even just recently, this last week, this one doctor has assisted the 7th or 8th person to die, and it destroys as if all of our life was just limited right here on earth, and there's no afterlife. We might have to get back to some very fundamental teachings of our church to counteract this, and go way back to the early lessons in the catechism in the first page. Why did God make us? Not to be happy here on earth, but actually be happy with Him, so that we know and recognize the God as the author of life. He is the one that gives us life, and He is the only one who has the right to take it. We cannot take our life ourselves. We are only custodians of life. So if we talk about euthanasia and say, well, we can let people die, or we can help them to die, or we can put them to death. And then comes this other lying behind this, is the fact that sometimes, due to the wisdom of men, aided by God, they've found ways to prolong our life. And they have means to keep it, but they are expensive. So now this creeping into the literature, into the talks, and what you read. Well, it would be somebody was, well, I'll take the age 70 because I'm not now. This guy's 70 and he's going to need a lot of attention. Well, let's just put him aside and let him die. And that may sound far-fetched, but a lot of the things we're facing today, 25 years ago or 30 years ago, we never even dreamed that they would come up as an issue. And now we say, it's going to cost too much. Well, let's, when are we going to come to the time and say, all right, you've been around long enough, we'll give you a little shot.
Sometimes it almost seems as if we're on the verge of that now. When there have been stories in the press recently and in the TV and radio about the high cost of medical care, and almost seems as if it's preparing the way for some selection about who gets expensive care and who gets left behind. It would
be selective. And then I'm afraid to say that the poor would probably be the first to go. And this is, we commiserate about the Holocaust and putting people to death and all of those horrors. And we looked at them as horrors at that time.
Yes.
But now we're getting kind of weakened by this. And we say, well, maybe this is some people now, not our church, but some people say, well, maybe we can do this and face euthanasia and deny the right of God to say when you're to die, or let people commit suicide. There was a time when suicide was against the civil law. Right. In some states, it might still be.
It still is, yeah.
And I imagine that's why so many things are happening in Michigan, because they haven't got a law against anybody to assist in suicide. So that's one of the great big issues, the euthanasia. Whether it's at the end of life or because somebody's suffering too much, that could be another one. Well, they're suffering. And then with the making of what they call the living will, and you give somebody else the authority, and euthanasia comes along, it might be a doctor said, well, I think it's time for this one to go. Or, unfortunately, again, the way people look for money and inheritances, the children might say, well, if we keep this person alive, we keep mom and dad alive all this while, we're going to use up all their inheritance. They may be inclined. Now, these are bad situations. We try to paint it as worst as possible. Just the other day, again, I read about some of the advances in medical science where to control pain. They're finally finding ways to do this. So pain would be one reason why people would want to end their life or have someone end it for them. So there are good things on the horizon, but all we have to worry about, when were they going to say, we're going to kill them?
Well, there was a governor in one of the Rocky Mountain states several years ago who proposed outright that some elderly people ought to die to get out of the way to make room for others.
Well, that's the danger. And then if that gets enacted into law and legislation, and it makes it possible for people to do this, then we have to really, again, assert God is the author of life. We are only custodians of it on earth, and we have to render an account later on, whether we used it according to God's commandment and God's destination for us.
Well, people are facing this issue. All of us will face it sometime or another, with relatives, with friends, with loved ones, and people have to bring their faith to come to grips with this issue. What can we say about just some key words that people can remember when they face this issue?
Well, one of the things we have to remember too is the value of suffering. Not we don't seek it, but when we have it, can we endure it? You know, there are some old expressions way back. You must bear your cross. And even the Lord tells you, if you want to follow me, you must take up your cross and follow me. And that might include some physical suffering. And the suffering has value in the sense that we can offer up our sufferings for the poor souls in purgatory. Another doctrine that's kind of played down a little bit, there is a purgatory. If we do our suffering patiently on earth, we can also make amends for our own personal sins and the sins of the world. There's all the spiritualization of suffering. Not that we have to go out looking for it. We can take ways to alleviate it. But suffering does have a value in the spiritual life. Mm-hmm. And you read some of the stories of athletes and people who suffer, and they're written up in some of the magazines. We have to be careful mentioning their name. Sometimes it appears on the monitor. And we have to do this, and it shows how people have used their suffering and have set an example for other people how to live, and even come down to the realization that God helped me through all this suffering. God is the one who eventually either overcomes the injuries and things that they're suffering from and makes them feel better.
And we can also join our sufferings to those of Christ on the cross.
Sure, all the way. Now, we talk about euthanasia at the end, but I came across an article the other day that maybe euthanasia can come in the beginning, where a child is born with some deformity or some other, and they say, well, let's just put the baby over here for a couple of days. If it lives, fine. If it doesn't, well, they automatically let it die. So that's the other end of life. But that's a kind of a euthanasia.
It is, yeah.
And naturally, of course, I've spoken more about the euthanasia part of it rather than the abortion part, because the abortion part is in the press quite frequently. And here again, we may have to go back to very fundamental ideas and say, again, God is the author of life, and the life begins, even scientists will tell you, life begins at the moment of conception. Mm-hmm. So anywhere along the line, you are destroying life. And it is called an abominable sin. Yes. in our doctrines and teaching. So we have to go, and again, we do not have control. Some think people have a right over their own bodies. They don't have a right. We are custodians.
Yes.
We can't do with our body whatever we want. I told some confirmation kids, I can't chop off my arm because I don't like it. You have to, there's a reason. If it's cancerous, you do that. But you cannot go along and do those things. Mm-hmm. So again, I said we got to go back. Life is a precious gift of God, and the life that we get is eventually to lead to eternity, lead to union with God. So we take off the temporal ideas, the value, the monetary, or the fact that someone can use their suffering.
All right, thank you very much, Bishop. You've given me a lot of insight to this whole thing, and thank you very much for being here on One-on-One.
Very pleased to be with you.
Thank you.
And I hope everyone listens and takes heed. Pray hard. That's all right.
One-on-One was brought to you by The Monitor, the weekly newspaper of the Diocese of Trenton. To subscribe to The Monitor, call 609-586-7400.
Set materials for Catholic Magazine provided by Tague Lumber Incorporated, serving the Delaware Valley for over 75 years. And by John Wanamaker, fine stores in the Delaware Valley. We welcome your comments, suggestions, and donations and encourage you to write us at Catholic Magazine, St. Charles Seminary, 1000 East Wynwood Road, Overbrook, PA, 19096, or call us during regular business hours at 668-9842.
Candidates and the catechumens are getting ready for their very special time of the year, the rite of election, when they become full members of the Roman Catholic Church. Let's join Father Pat Lavin as he tells us the Christians are coming.
We're here at the baptismal fountain of the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception of Mary in beautiful downtown Camden, New Jersey. Throughout this country, thousands and thousands of people over the past year have been gathering in the basements of churches and in classrooms and schools and in private homes in order to listen and also to share in their journey of faith. They come as unbaptized persons, they come as baptized members of other denominations than Roman, and they also come as Roman Catholics who have been baptized, but for one reason or another have never going on to receive instruction or to receive the sacraments of the Church. And so they have come to join the rite of Christian initiation of adults in the local Catholic community. They come in search, they come as a troubadour looking for the divine. Today, as we begin Lent, it's a very, very beautiful day. It's a day of celebration. And I say celebration because all of the elect throughout the diocese of our country have gone to their cathedrals or to the designated churches within their diocese in order to meet the bishop. The elect, those unbaptized, come and sign their name into the book. And those who are candidates, those who are baptized, and who wish to become members of the Church of Rome are introduced to the ordinaries of the diocese. An experience which for me has turned out to be fantastic, and for the people involved, it's very, very good, and a change of life. Because the next time they will come together in their local community on Holy Saturday during the great Easter Vigil service, and it is there where they will be baptized or they'll make their profession of faith. It's there where together they will receive Eucharist for the first time and to be confirmed in the Spirit. Last year in the Diocese of Camden in Trenton, New Jersey, and in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, 553 people were baptized, and another 1,749 made their professions of faith during that Easter Vigil, and together with the entire community received communion for the first time, and they were confirmed. When this program first became mandatory in September the 1st, 1988, I must tell you I disliked it very, very much. I said, how can you bring a whole group of people together to learn about the faith without losing the intimacy of the one-on-one contact? And I was wrong. I was definitely wrong, because I have learned in the past 5 years that I have met a lot of beautiful, beautiful people, and together in sharing their experience and their understanding of God, that they have been able to enlighten our personal community and enlighten this person himself. You see, the program calls forth a lot of sharing, a lot of intimate experiences of faith, which is something very, very personal. And everybody walks according to their own beat of the drum. My mother, for example, she didn't become a Roman Catholic until her 80th birthday. And here, together, we have a group of people who come in various sizes, various shapes, and various colors. Our community has been enlightened by people who have joined us with bringing the great traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism, of Judaism, and of nothingism. Oh yes, it's a fantastic experience. And for them, it's not a Sunday affair. It's every day of the week where they get involved with scripture studies, where they get involved as being a Eucharistic minister or as a lector, or they become involved in the pre-Cana program in our parish community. And they're also teaching religious education in our School of Religion. These people are alive and vibrant, and they call us to life. It's so easy to become comfortable. Comfortable in our marriages, comfortable in our priesthood, comfortable in our sisterhood. We all go through the same phases, the romantic phase, the disillusionment phase, and also the true joy. And sometimes in our lives, they come together within a 5-minute period of time. In my case, in my 22 years of priesthood in the Diocese of Camden, I have had those days when I become nothing more than the ecclesiastical janitor and the liturgical functionary. And it's thanks to people like those that I've met in the RCIA program and the providence of God where I am called back to life also. What a blessing it would be for we cradle Catholics to be able to listen to the witnessing of the elect and have them call us forth from our Rip Van Winkle existence. We're told many, many times that the just person lives by faith, and the author of the Epistle to the Hebrews gives a clear answer to us of what faith is. He writes, "Faith is the confident assurance concerning what we hope for, and the conviction about things that we do not see." Yes, our church is truly blessed by the many people who are seeking to join us. And I'm firmly convinced that you and I are being called with them to be the feet and the hands of Jesus the Christ. You see, to believe is to be on the road, and to be a believing community is to be on the road together. This is Father Pat Lavin. Until you invite me into your home again, I wish you peace, I wish you shalom, and keep on with your song.
And it was good to see Father Pat Lavin on our program, as well as Bishop Reiss, who joined us earlier in the program.
Good to have them both anytime. We have some announcements for the folks, don't we, Paul?
Yes, we do. As we begin the Lenten season, Catholic Magazine would like to congratulate the catechumens and the candidates who have taken yet another step along their journey toward receiving the Easter sacraments. We also like you to know that 1993 marks the 250th anniversary of the first baptized Delaware Valley Black Catholic. We encourage you to read more about the rich history of Black Catholics in our area and recommend The History of Black Catholics in the United States by Cyprian Davis and A History of Black Catholics in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, an essay by Deacon Edward Purnell and Father Rayford Emmons. Copies of the essay are available from the Office for Black Catholics at 215-587-3634. Pat?
All right. For many years, Operation Rice Bowl, a project sponsored by Catholic Relief Services, has been fighting in this country and throughout the world. A Lenten program of prayer, fasting, education, and almsgiving, Operation Rice Bowl is an opportunity to pray, share, and be united with all of God's people. Of all the money collected, 25% of donations remain right here in your diocese to help feed the hungry. The rest is used by Catholic Relief Services to support programs overseas. So if you happen to see a container like this one in your parish, please be generous by donating whatever you can to help give hope to the world in need. And finally, please subscribe to your local diocesan newspaper. They are important sources of information for all of us Catholics.
Until next week, this is Catholic Magazine. I'm Paul Pirello. Thanks so much for being with us.
And I'm Pat Shelton. We'll see you next week. Good night.
Good night.